Dan Rubenstein.
Oh my God, we're live. We're live.
We are live. Welcome one, welcome all. It is midnight.
People can see us.
You are watching the recording of the Week 12 Campfire episode. Please make sure you hit subscribe on the channel.
Smash.
Smash the like button. And, of course, if you're in the chat, you can see at the very top, we've got the link pinned to follow our podcast. This is a live recording. We're going to try some stuff tonight, Dan.
Let's try it.
I am ready to go if you are ready to go.
I've got sound speed, Ty. I've never been more ready.
To you over there in Chicago and to everybody, the millions watching at home, let's count this guy in and let's recap Week 12, shall we?
Let's.
All right, let's do it. In 3, let's do it in 2. College football Week 12 in the books, Dan Rubenstein. How are you, my friend?
I love the energy, Ty. I'm terrific. I'm very excited. It was a roller coaster of a day that I thought we were going underwater. I thought we were going loop to loop. I thought we were going sideways, but we went underwater. It was all over the place. Loved it. Can't wait to talk about it.
Make sure you hit the subscribe button on your podcasting app of choice. We'd love to have you with us the rest of the way here, really throughout the full duration of the college football offseason. We don't stop. We can't stop. We love this thing. Solidverbal.com, of course, is our website, Dan. There's a lot to discuss this week. Maybe it was a little bit short on what we would consider true headlining results or matchups or whatever, but college football is never short on narrative. We've got a lot to get into here. We, of course, will go through the headliners, the good, the bad, the ugly, the roasts, the dude alerts, the reverbs. We've got a whole bunch to get through. But should we try and recap everything in
Let's get it. Let's get those headliners, Ty.
Should we just recap everything right away in 4 minutes?
Let's throw the people into the fire.
Dan Rubenstein!
That's me.
Michigan and Ohio State on a collision course. The Buckeyes, too much for Minnesota. Michigan, no match for Talia, turned the ball over. 2 picks for him, a sluggish win for the Maize and Blue, but hey, free Jim Harbaugh, baby, free him! The winner, of course, gets Iowa next week. 15-13, what a score over Illinois. Bring back Brian Ferentz, I say, for 2024. Drew Aller went down for Penn State, but all hail baby Trace Bo Prabula. Got the front door cover for Penn State 27-6 over Rutgers. They even let him throw it once, which is nice. We've got Northwestern getting bowl eligible for the first time in a couple years. Sparty with possibly the final straw for Tom Allen. Nebraska and Wisconsin go to overtime. Wisconsin wins in a close one. Scary moment in the Florida State game. Jordan Travis goes down a gruesome angle. Did you see this?
Yeah, lower the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hip drop tackle against North Alabama.
Yeah.
Catastrophic.
Awful.
We'll get to it and what it means for Florida State moving forward, but most importantly, just feel terrible for the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Speedy recovery to Travis. We'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. By the way, buy one, get 2 free in Miami for the Louisville game. Jack Plummer got 3 touchdowns and a 10th win for the Cardinals. They're headed to the ACC title game in 2 weeks. We had Notre Dame big in the Sam Hartman Bowl. We had Clemson and Carolina running for 500 in North Carolina versus South Carolina, at least in some form. The Tigers won. NC State a whisper quiet 8-3 after another win for the Wolfpack. Georgia Tech gets bowl eligible. And hey, Tony Elliott got his first home win.
Boom.
In the ACC. Pitt also beat Boston College on Thursday night. In the Pac-12, Washington, Oregon State in a monsoon, 22-20, I believe the final. The Huskies held on to win. We had Charles Chip Kelly apparently coaching for his job and getting the W by 18 over NC State. 6 touchdowns.
No, over USC, but it's okay.
For your boy Bo Nix, maybe the new Heisman frontrunner. Arizona, maybe the best 3-loss team in America, pounded Utah. Wazoo, a founding member of the Pac-2.
That's true.
42-point win. And Dan Rubenstein in the big game. Tron Grizzle was out on the field. Cal with a win. and a big game from their sophomore wideout to close things out here. It was all about the Aggies in the SEC, Dan Rubenstein.
It was.
Not those Aggies. New Mexico State, baby. 31.
Shout out Las Cruces.
31-10 over Auburn. They were 25.5-point dogs. Speaking of dogs, lower the music here. Georgia's going to three-peat, aren't they?
I wouldn't bet my money against them.
Georgia's going to three-peat. 38-10 over Tennessee. Close wins for Mizzou and South Carolina. Big wins for Bama, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU, A&M, and Arkansas. Arkansas is bringing back Sam Pittman. Don't know if you saw that one. And last but certainly not least, Texas allowed 9 yards rushing on the road against Iowa State. Yeah, hook 'em horns, 26-16 over Iowa State. Dylan Gabriel out with a concussion. Jackson Arnold in, burns the red shirt. Oklahoma wins in Provo. K-State wins the Sunflower Showdown. Another win for the Pokes. Now 6-1 after the bye week. A 71-yard pass from John Rice Plumlee to Javon Baker looked to tie the game up in the fourth quarter. But the Red Raiders survive and get bowl eligible. And wins for West Virginia, TCU over Cincinnati and Baylor. That is your quick recap, Dan.
Okay. Thanks for listening. And took the words out of my mouth. Where are we starting?
Go on out, visit forballers.com. Join our community. Hope you like our quick recap. Yeah, let's do this. So I almost hate to lead in with this sound because it kind of adds some levity to the situation. But the Florida State thing is kind of devastating, if I'm being honest. Like we typically will lead this spot talking about some of the biggest games of the week, but there weren't really any upsets to speak of. But this was the thing I think that made us the most upset.
Yes.
And that was Jordan Travis going down. So what happened essentially was first quarter, Jordan Travis scrambles, goes down. You can see it clear as day that his ankle is pointed in a different direction than it should.
Yeah.
He gets carted off, taken to the hospital. Tate Rodemaker steps in. He's the backup. He finished the game. He's going to finish the season is what this amounts to.
You remember, and he subbed in last year in, I think, the Louisville game when Jordan Travis went down. Yeah.
So, like now and again in sports, we have injuries like this that are physically painful to watch. And it's part of the reason why my wife doesn't want to watch sports with me. She never recovered from the Kevin Ware injury, the
Louisville, right?
Injury. Yeah. But this is one of those deals where you saw it and you can't unsee it. And I'm upset about it on like 17 different levels. It was really hard to watch.
It was incredibly unfortunate. And Jordan Travis, who had such a long road, if you remember, just the Louisville tie-in, transferring in, and there was the whole thing with transcripts taking forever to become eligible and really growing into an unbelievably successful quarterback for the Noles. I know the specific kind of tackle, the hip drop tackle, which has come into news in the NFL. I think it was Mark Andrews, the former Oklahoma tight end, now on the Ravens. That's what led him. I think it was Tony Pollard in the playoffs last year against the 49ers. So it's become a thing. Jordan Travis, the latest victim of it, and it's a totally legal move, but has come under fire. And Heather Dinich made a good point. I think it was on SportsCenter afterwards that the committee, and looking at Florida State, who's, unfortunately you have to look through it through this lens, they're going to evaluate Florida State. They're not projecting forward, right? They're going to see what Florida State looks like without Jordan Travis in the way that they looked at what Ohio State looked like without JT Barrett when they had Cardale Jones. And so Florida State, whatever their final record is, whatever they look like against Louisville in the ACC championship, whatever they look like against Florida, they're going to be given the benefit of the doubt that, like, this is what they look like. This is their quarterback, and we are not evaluating them based on what they don't have, but rather what they do. So that's where Florida State stands moving forward as they are squarely in the college football playoff hunt.
Yeah. I mean, there's a really good chance they still finish the year 12-0.
Sure.
They win the ACC, but without Jordan Travis, I mean, I'll just say it. They're not beating the teams that we currently have in the top 6. They're not beating any of them.
No, but if they beat Florida and Louisville with Tate Rodemaker, and they do it relatively impressively, and Florida's going to be tough. Florida nearly beat Mizzou tonight, and certainly Louisville with the way, they survived Miami, but they're a tough team as well. But Florida State still has a lot going for it. The way that they've improved running the ball, the way that the defense has stepped up, especially in swarming quarterbacks. It's a very weird situation, and I don't know. The headline here is just hope eventually Jordan Travis is able to recover and be successful.
Florida State fell down early to North Alabama. Obviously, this took a little bit of the wind out of their sails, but they came back and ended up winning in pretty resounding fashion. Obviously, as you said, we'll see what happens next week against Florida, but bit of a bummer to start off the show this evening. Let's shift, though, to that Louisville-Miami game, which you just mentioned.
Yeah.
38-31 Louisville wins. This is a fun game. It was evenly matched. It was the clear highlight of the early window, to say the least. I did a Louisville deep dive a couple weeks ago over on Patreon, reballers.com. And one of the tendencies that I pointed out that comes out in the numbers is Louisville likes to use play action and misdirection. And there was a clear distinction between Jack Plummer's numbers when they're using play action versus when they're not. And if you watch this game, you saw a lot of that. You saw that in practice here by Jeff Brom. A lot of fake handoffs, the fake pitches, the fake screens, even to an extent. All that misdirection stuff, frankly, gave Jack Plummer easy throws in a lot of cases. And though he had a mistake, this was about the best I have seen him play. It struck me as being very obvious that both Jeff and Brian Brom schemed the hell out of this game. And they had their quarterback in the best position to succeed. You know, they didn't get all they wanted from Jawar Jordan. He was hurt. I mean, they did fine on the ground, but ultimately they won this game through the air, Dan. And I don't know if that was something that I saw. I liked Louisville to win.
Yeah.
I didn't see them winning this one through the air in the manner that they did.
No, same. And I was going back and forth with a lot of these games early on, and what stood out to me, of course, was the very last play of the game, and that's Miami completing a Hail Mary just short of the goal line. So, no, really strong, unexpected, almost finish to the season for Louisville.
And I got to say, TVD got the start, Tyler Van Dyke.
Yep.
He'd thrown interceptions in like 5 straight games, something like that.
It's kind of what he does.
He's banged up again.
Yeah.
It's not been a great year, but this was a good game for him as well. It really was. 0 turnovers in a big game. Xavier Restrepo, big game. Mark Fletcher Jr., big freshman. Dude's built like a refrigerator. 6'2", 225, averaged 7.5 a carry in this game. There's a lot of offense in this matchup. And so there were certainly bright spots for Miami, but ultimately I kept coming away from this thinking of Jack Plummer. I just was really impressed by the showing that he put in. By virtue of this win now, Louisville is going to go to the ACC title game, which is suddenly a lot more interesting for the reasons we just discussed here with the injury to Jordan Travis. But that game will be in 2 weeks. We'll talk about it in due course. But big win for Louisville. They were favored by a point and a half. It was a tight game. Didn't really know which way to go. Kind of felt like a coin flip. Louisville gets the dub on the road. So big one for them. The other headliner that we talked a lot about in the build-up to Week 12 was the Georgia-Tennessee game.
Mm-hmm.
This point spread, when we previewed it, I want to say was 10.5. If you popped online early on Saturday morning, it came down to 9.5, which is when I jumped in. It was the only correct bet I had all day. I think there are 2 things that are true at once, but before I get there, I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record with Georgia.
Okay.
And it's almost hard not to at this point, because most of the teams that Georgia plays, and it's been this way for, 2-3 years now, Dan, they get about half a quarter before Georgia figures them out. You know what I mean? That's all you get. You really don't have much wiggle room.
Well, that's sort of been Tennessee's MO this year, right? They jump out to something interesting. Like they are one of the great opening drive architecture firms, whatever.
Opening play in this case.
Opening play, absolutely. Was Jalen Wright who took the long run to the house?
Opening play, 75-yard touchdown, Jalen Wright, yeah.
And Kirby Smart joked after the game, man, Kirby, when he has a comfortable win and he's feeling loose, he said he and Glenn Schumann, co-defensive coordinator for Georgia, talked about it and was like, it's best just to let Tennessee get their touchdown out of the way as early as possible and then move on from there. God.
Yeah, I mean, that play alone accounted for 27% of Tennessee's total yardage in the football game. Over the next 59 minutes and 49 seconds, they had a shade over 200 yards and just 3 more points.
Yeah.
Georgia had 41 minutes of possession. They drained the life out of Tennessee in this game. They were 9 of 13 on third down. They just their offense never left the field. So it was a dominant showing by them. The two things that I think are true at once that I alluded to, one, it probably goes without saying, dominant showing by Georgia. Yeah. This was dominant.
Yes. On the road at Tennessee, tough place to play. Dolly Parton in the house.
Dolly in the house, yeah, man.
Singing sort of off because she couldn't hear the band play Rocky Top, and she sang Rocky Top, and she's delightful. She's a national treasure.
But Georgia's getting better. They're getting better. Carson Beck is still outstanding. It's just like a conveyor belt of guys on the Georgia side. So it's hard for me to envision a situation in which they don't win the championship again, but that's the first thing. The second thing that's true, I think, is it fair to say that Tennessee's overrated? Not that good?
I mean, depends who's doing the rating. I mean, I don't know if I've thought Tennessee was all that good for a few weeks now. And this sort of just punctuated that thought. And it was Georgia in all phases. It was a different receiver. It was Rosemy Jackson. He was the one who made big plays. He was one who I think caught that double pass. The running back threw him wide open in the end zone relatively early on.
Great play in that spot.
It's a great player. It's a different receiver, different tight end stepping up every week. Carson Beck only made a couple of pretty regrettable plays. I still don't think he's the playmaker that Stetson Bennett was, and we'll see if that, is the difference in some close matchups like Georgia had last year against Ohio State, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Georgia's just improving by like 30% each week, which is pretty scary to think about. And you look at the teams ahead of them, and we'll see with Alabama in the SEC championship game, but potentially in the playoff. It's hard to envision a situation in which Ohio State, Michigan, Texas,
right?
Now not Florida State, of course. Like, it's just very difficult. Oregon, Washington, we'll see. But it's hard to envision when a team is operating that deeply and improving by the margins that they are. It's hard to see a team competing. And so great win for Georgia over, again, I don't think all that much of this year's version of Tennessee. Like, it was, I think, a 24-10 game, and Joe Milton had a receiver who had 3 steps on a Georgia corner and overthrew him by 8 yards, right?
Yeah.
And there were opportunities for Tennessee. They're just not a team built to win on an impressive level right now.
Yeah, I mean, we have the reason I bring it up is because we have people tweeting at us about it. Yeah. And Tennessee's not that good, or Tennessee's overrated, that type of stuff. I do like their rushing attack for the most part, and I think there are elements of their defense that are very solid. But the fact remains that they've basically given up 30 points, give or take, against the 5 best teams on their schedule. And they lost 4 of those games handily. So, it is not Tennessee from last year. The quarterback situation is different. The offense is different. It is certainly not as good a Tennessee team as I expected coming into the year. But that said, it's not necessarily a scarlet letter if you get blown out against Georgia, because Georgia's Georgia. Again, unfortunately, Georgia is Georgia.
But if you lose to 5-6 Florida, that's not ideal. Current 5-6 Florida. Florida was not 5-6 at the time. Look, Tennessee is September Maryland in the first 7 minutes of big games, right? That's a very meta inception-y way of looking at it, and I'm very silly for doing so. But yeah, that's what we have now in Georgia. Do you want to go to another headline, another couple of headliners? Where are we going?
I want to talk about Washington, Oregon State.
Oh, man.
I want to talk about Washington, Oregon State. So Washington, as I said at the top, Washington hung on in a monsoon, 22-20. This was not a spectacular offensive showing. And you tweeted it to me. Tweeted it, texted it, Slacked it.
Your brain is social media fried. Continue.
It really is. You communicated to me through some fashion that it was like guys trying to catch a greased pig out there.
Yeah.
It just, nobody could hold on to anything, and the weather clearly played a factor in this game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, Washington finds a way. Washington, they're the Huskies, but they're bloodhounds, right? They sniff out wins, and it's not always pretty.
Hey, you.
Look at this. That's pretty good, right?
That's good. I like that.
They get outgained by teams. They get, the fear of life put into them by teams late in games. You could think back to Arizona State, Stanford, all these matchups in which it's come down to it against inferior opponents. Oregon State hasn't really beaten anybody this year, but they're a quality team playing at home in the rain. It's an opportunity. They're able to possess the ball like crazy, especially in that second half where they get into a rhythm. They get off the field when Washington has the ball. I think at one point, Washington into the fourth quarter had like 6 plays under its belt in the second half. And it was a good strategy. It was a sound strategy. Unfortunately, Oregon State couldn't really throw the ball. DJU couldn't really consistently throw the ball downfield when it mattered most, when there were, I wouldn't say there were guys open, and it's one of those, the way that Oregon State is built, they've got shorter receivers, tight end play isn't where it's been lately, and so those downfield threats, we talk about winter wonders, that's where Oregon State was lacking. If Oregon State has a true number one go-to receiver, and the way that Washington, Oregon, Arizona this season, USC last year, like if they have that guy, it's a different game. If I had wheels, I'd be a bicycle. Oregon State is not built to win a game like this, especially in the rain, especially when they're counted on to make 3rd and 9s count. And so Washington, for all of Michael Penix's flaws, he had some bad throws tonight. He connected with Rome Odunze when it counted. Dylan Johnson continues to run super well. And again, for all the flaws of Washington's defense, they find ways to get off the field when it matters, and that's when they're up 22-20 when Oregon State has the ball driving. And so a great win for Washington on the road. It keeps happening for them. And I was texting with our friend Jeff Schwartz, and he was like, they're this year's TCU, right? It's not always pretty, but winning is a skill that Washington 130% has, and it's crazy impressive.
I brought that up on the preview show too. There's a little bit of TCU in this year's Washington in that they're defensively, they're clearly a liability in spots, but offensively they find a way to win those moments. They just find a way to do it. And, we can look at spreadsheets till we're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, you either win the moments or you don't. TCU won them consistently a year ago. That's how they got to the national championship game. And Washington so far they've played a lot of close games here over the back half of the season. There's no denying that. But the fact that now they are winning these games, they're winning these games on the road, they're going to go into the Pac-12 championship, maybe the playoff, and be perhaps the most battle-tested team out there. That says something about the character of the team and what Kalen DeBoer has built, what Michael Penix is leading on the offensive side.
That back shoulder throw that he has with Rome Odunze, there's nothing you can do.
No.
You can hope he is off. You can hope that there's a drop. You can hope that there's a gust of wind in the very opportune passing lane. They're just automatic together. It's so cool to watch a team playing them, which I have before.
Yeah. Well, look, Oregon State, as you said, still a very, very solid team. And
yeah, they are.
I think it was very, very telling that the point spread was what it was. It kind of wobbled a little bit, right? Oregon State was favored by 2. I looked this morning. Washington was favored by 1. I remember saying on the preview, I don't get the point spread. I don't understand why it's this. I don't know if maybe Vegas knew about the weather or what it was, but they were right on. This was right on the money.
Mm-hmm.
Very easily could have gone one way or the other. So good on Washington. Another big win. They find ways to get the job done. And it seems as if, barring any kind of catastrophe in the Apple Cup next week, we are on a collision course for another Oregon versus Washington rematch on Friday night before all of the games take center stage on Saturday.
Yeah.
Friday night Pac-12 championship. I'm sure you'll be a bundle of nerves for that one.
Mm-hmm.
In Vegas, yeah?
In Vegas, Washington has clinched a berth, and Oregon will clinch a berth with a win against the Beavers. But if Oregon State if Oregon State beats the Ducks and Arizona beats ASU, Arizona finds themselves via tiebreaker against Washington in a rematch of a different kind. So I think either way we'll have a great Pac-12 championship game. It seems likely with the way, and we'll get to it, with the way Oregon dismantled ASU and that game against the Beavers being in Eugene, it seems likely that we're going to get the rematch that I think a lot of people want.
Are there any other games here on this slate? Week 12, again, was somewhat short on the big center stage gravitational games that everybody talks about. We've obviously found a few here. Were there any others that really bubbled to the surface for you after looking over?
Not in terms, I think, of playoff, but just in terms of college football storyline and the future of the sport. I thought UCLA USC was fascinating just because of the back half of USC's season, starting 6-0, finishing 1-5. They have a bye week this coming week, or or their regular season is done. They're not playing in the Pac-12 championship game, and the rumors swirling around Chip Kelly. I thought that was just, in terms of the future of these teams moving to the Big Ten, fascinating. And you mentioned Chip Kelly potentially coaching for his job. UCLA ran all over USC, able to take advantage and force turnovers. USC just looking done, and looking done from kind of the start, other than Caleb Williams making the plays he can make, but defense not there, rushing attack not there at all. Marshawn Lloyd had that fumble for a scoop and score for UCLA. It's going to be a fascinating next few weeks with signing day, with coaching moves, coordinator moves for these two big programs in LA. So
yeah,
a wild game just in terms of what we could see in terms of reverberations.
Crazy. One other one I'll throw out, and then we'll get to
Please.
warm fuzzies. Some of the things that made us happy in watching these games. The Texas win.
Yes.
The Texas win was actually reminiscent of the Washington win, in that
Agree.
It was not pretty. It was probably never going to be pretty. Bear in mind that Texas came into this game having lost Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks, their star tailback, a year after losing Bijan Robinson to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, that was a question coming into this year. Now, I don't know if it was a gaping hole that we were genuinely concerned about. I think we assumed they would figure it out in due
You're
time.
often pretty concerned about gaping holes. I know that about you, Ty.
You know how it is, man.
That's just who you are as a human.
It's who I am as a human, of course. Yeah. But Jonathan Brooks, the way he has stepped in, really gave that offense a new dynamic. So him going down, it was, I think, an open question. All right, what's it going to look like when they're on the road in a hostile environment? Clearly a de facto national championship game for Iowa State. C.J. Baxter was fine, but Quinn Ewers was good. The defense remains the thing for Texas. We talk a lot about Ewers, Xavier Worthy, and for a while, Jonathan Brooks and all these stars that A.D. Mitchell, all these guys that they've got on the offensive side of the ball. But truly, the defense has been the bedrock for the thing that Steve Sarkisian has built so far this season. And if they find their way into the playoff, again, it will be the thing that I think we need to pay more attention to, because the defense allowed 9 yards rushing on the road at night. Of course, Texas needs a little bit of help in the rankings, but I just think that they're proven to be very, very resilient. And if they get into a big game situation, we keep waiting for Texas to become the Texas that they've been. And of course, didn't win the Red River rivalry. That was a loss. That's a problem. That's why they are where they are in the standings.
Very strange game, but yes.
Very strange game. But all that being said, they've just proven a resiliency this year that we haven't seen, a toughness that we haven't seen recently among Texas teams, that I think is really the thing that gives me the most, I don't know, we'll get to warm fuzzies now. That's what gives me the warm fuzzies about Texas, Dan.
Yeah, it was
that they're different this year.
All due respect to our friend Crispy Brown, it was smart football from Texas, right? It was sound defense, making sure that Iowa State was not able to keep moving the chains on the ground. They completely silenced the clones on the ground. And what is the number underneath the letters INT for Quinn Ewers in this game?
0.
It's 0, right? And that's a huge deal. This game was perfect. It was a perfect cocoon for Quinn Ewers to struggle against a very strong pass defense in a hostile environment at night, and he looked calm, cool, and collected, coming back from an injury still,
Yep.
finding guys. And this was something that I noticed about Joe Milton that Carson Beck didn't display, that I don't think Quinn Ewers displayed tonight, which was he didn't neglect very good for the sake of maybe great, tiny chance of great. He took the good. He took the very good instead of trying to play hero ball. And that's what I thought Carson Beck does a nice job of. Bo Nix has gotten better at that. Michael Penix, I think, can chase it a little too much, the hero ball, but does a very good job of finding the smart passes. And I think that's the difference with where we are in Quinn Ewers' growth cycle right now. And so really cool to see a Texas team answer the bell at a tough Jack Trice Stadium.
Very tough spot to play.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers, it sounds like, coming back next season, which I think is a smart move for him. It's going to be a loaded quarterback class, and coming off injuries now in consecutive seasons, he needs to put together a fully healthy season. That's obviously a boon for Texas. I don't know what it means for Arch Manning or Malik Murphy, but that's another conversation for another day.
Whoa, crazy how we did the Washington game, and then you discussed Malik Murphy's future. Continue.
There you go. Oh, perhaps a little foreshadowing. Let's get to our warm fuzzies.
Yes. 'Yes. 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 'Yes.
These are the things that gave us the warm fuzzies in college football week 12, Dan. Michigan got its 1,000th win.
America's team, Ty. You gotta
America's
feel
team.
good. Yeah.
Sharon Moore getting this win as the, I guess, interim coach. That's going to be a trivia question. Write that one down. Put it on a napkin in your coat pocket.
Mm-hmm. That
That will be a trivia question or an answer to a trivia question at some barroom 5 years from now. Who was the coach that got the... This for me was a mixed bag. Okay. It was warm fuzzies because they got the win, because they are building now towards this massive game a week from now against Ohio State. Clearly there were some impressive individual performances. I'm thinking of Blake Corum. I'm thinking of Mike Sainrissil.
I was gonna say, yeah.
2 interceptions, right? Very good. All these stuff.
Putting on the sunglasses, yeah.
Sure. On the whole, though, this was not an impressive win. It wasn't. And I don't know if we chalk it up to Harbaugh not being there. I don't know if we chalk it up to a look ahead with Ohio State on deck.
Not playing anyone all year. Continue. Yeah.
Maybe not playing anyone all year. Yeah. Maybe Maryland was fired up, right? They were in that game until late. I don't know to what we attribute what we saw. But our sense as we watched it and typed back and forth was that Michigan felt like they were playing not to lose. And it felt like the version that we saw, at least to me, is not good enough to beat Ohio State. I've gone 11 weeks now, 11 games now, thinking Michigan's going to do the same thing to Ohio State that they've done the last 2 seasons. And the version of Michigan that I saw this week left me feeling somewhat doubtful about that assumption.
Michigan looked like they were coached by an offensive line coach, which they were, right? That there wasn't a lot of trust in the passing game, that it was super conservative. It was, win everything in the line at the line of scrimmage in the trenches, which is fine. And Michigan has done a great job of it, but they have one pitch. And it'll be interesting to see if Ohio State forces them to do new things. Now, Ohio State's defense should. I don't know that this is last year's Ohio State. It certainly looks to me like C.J. Stroud might have been incredibly special for Ohio State, as he's incredibly special for the Houston Texans. And so this just isn't that version. They have the offensive skill talent. They don't have the offensive line. And so I don't look at this as anything near a certainty that Ohio State is just in a different place than Michigan after Michigan struggles against Maryland. This was what? This is your favorite phrase, your de facto Super Bowl for Maryland, right? They're getting up for a game like this in a way that they don't for others, at home against a playoff caliber team. And Michigan just looks a little out of sorts, a little too often on offense. And maybe that's a Harbaugh thing. Maybe that's a J.J. McCarthy pressing too much. No. Whatever the case is, it certainly does not look like a team ready to compete at the top levels of the sport.
Yeah, I don't know. More on Maryland a little bit later, more on Michigan a little bit later. Real quick, like while we're talking about the Big Ten, not to be outdone by any of the stuff going on in the East.
Yeah.
But the Big Ten West still has teams that defy the laws of gravity. I mean, it's incredible. Northwestern getting bowl eligible is a great story. Not just that, but Braun getting the interim tag removed, I think, is a smart move. It's a smart hire. They have played better. They have gotten better throughout the course of the year. Doesn't need to be pretty.
Right.
But the fact that they got the 6 wins is impressive. They had 2 really big goal line stands in this game. As somebody who had Purdue plus the number, plus the adjusted point spread, if maybe one of those goes in Purdue's direction, playing without Hudson Card, maybe it's a different story. But that was a nice win.
David Braun, probable Big Ten Coach of the Year?
It's
him or Rick Minter, obviously. The job he's done.
And real quick, just Iowa going back to the Big Ten championship. Yeah. It is a season completely void of offense. For as much as we have laughed about it and talked down to it, it is working against the schedule in front of them.
I was going to say.
And, good on them. Good on them, because nobody else in the Big Ten West is any kind of team you can set your watch to. So Iowa seems to be that team. They're going to play against either Michigan or Ohio State in 2 weeks. They will probably lose that game handily, but the fact that they are there at all is a testament to, I guess, what Kirk Ferentz has done. So
it's a particularly good year to only need to be able to score 16 points to win a game in the Big Ten.
Thank you.
It's a robust, dynamic year in the Big Ten for teams who feel comfortable about getting to a win with 16 points.
Give me a warm fuzzy.
All right. Let me pull up my list, Ty, because I have a good number of them. My first warm fuzzy is It's probably Harrison Mevis. Honestly, he sort of encapsulates the Mizzou experience. He kicks 4 field goals. I think he became the all-time leading scorer for Mizzou a couple weeks ago in that Georgia loss, but he ices and wins the game for Mizzou at the almost horn, over Florida in a back-and-forth game. 6 second-half lead changes. And, man, Brady Cook to Luther Burden in just a must-get situation late. As I think it was Jesse Palmer noted, nobody on Luther Burden. He just found himself a nice little space in the middle of the field.
Right.
And Brady Cook driving them down even further. Harrison Mevis, just an unbelievably solid year. Not even solid. Crazy impressive All-American caliber year for Harrison Mevis. Obviously, I sort of welcome to the big time against Kansas State, but the win against Florida in a back-and-forth matchup, obviously Schrader still incredible on the ground. But, yeah, that was a warm fuzzy. Harrison Mevis and Brady Cook leading the way.
Yeah, I jotted down great games in the Big 12 as one of mine. I talked about the Texas game, so I won't go back through that. But the Kansas State game, Sunflower Showdown, was a good game. Jason Bean was not able to go. He looked like he was warming up. Sounded like everybody was optimistic, but Cole Ballard eventually got the nod. Third stringer, made some mistakes, threw 2 picks, but I think this game was proof that you throw out the depth charts as well as the records in a rivalry, because Kansas still found a way to, for a while anyway, have a lead in this game. Devin Neal, really big game on the ground for the Jayhawks. They were up by 11 until midway through the third quarter, but that's when K-State turned it on. Scored 15 unanswered. They had rushing touchdowns from DJ Giddens, Will Howard late when it counted, to win this one 31-27. I was just glad that this was a good game. This was your lock of the week. I believe you had K-State big.
Yeah, they didn't cover. They had sort of a chance. They came back late. And what was the final? They won by 4?
31-27, yeah.
Yeah. They had like a 3rd and 32 or something like that. At that point, I realized that they were not going to cover this game with a late touchdown. So, no, still a nice performance from K-State.
A very nice performance. And you know what? Good on Kansas. Good on Kansas for the season that I was looking at the schedule before this, and I'm thinking, man, if they beat K-State, they can go 9-3. The fact that we're here even talking or thinking about Kansas going 9-3 is just hell of a job Lance Leipold. I understand why A&M or Michigan State or any of those schools that need coaches would want to look in the direction of Lance Leipold, because the job he's done in a very short period of time at Lawrence is remarkable. So good on him.
I'm gonna pat my own back here for my next warm fuzzy. The Oregon Ducks, Ty. A lot of teams didn't necessarily come on. I'm just telling you.
Homer pick. Go ahead.
Oregon has never won at Arizona State in November. Okay, Jaden Daniels looks to be the best player in college football right now, putting up another crazy Heisman-worthy performance. I mean, it was not against an SEC team tonight, but he is consistently excellent. I lose sleep over what he did to Oregon in Tempe in November, with Oregon looking like a surefire playoff team. There is I saw the phrase desert voodoo that exists in the Pac-12. Oregon scored 28 points in the time it takes to take a long pee at Arizona State. They absolutely shredded them. I think Troy Franklin is now setting records for Oregon at receiver. He is one of the all-time greats in 3 years at Oregon at receiver. Bo Nix, a Heisman-worthy quarterback for Oregon, throws for a bajillion yards and a bajillion touchdowns. Arizona State's not that good. Taking care of business as an Oregon fan in the desert is nothing that makes me feel cold and ashamed, Ty. It makes me feel warm, and it makes me feel fuzzy. So they get a warm fuzzy as Oregon demolishes ASU and Kenny Dillingham.
I get one text a week from my uncle, a diehard Giants fan, asking me, should the Giants draft Bo Nix? Should the Giants draft Bo Nix, Dan?
He's in a pretty... I'll tell you this.
Okay.
If you believe that the Giants have an ideal situation around Bo Nix in terms of play calling and receivers and offensive line and rushing attack, sure. He's got it good at Oregon right now.
Fair enough. Good answer. NC State gave me the warm fuzzies, Dan. NC State.
As they should.
NC State is all alone in third place in the ACC. I have not been the biggest NC State fan. Mea culpa. I believe I'm on record as of like 8 weeks ago saying they're the 8th best team in the ACC.
Man.
The joke is on me. The joke is on me. I like their defense. I love Casey Concepcion. They beat Virginia Tech today. If they beat UNC next week, it's a 9-3 season for Dave Durham. And it looks like I was wrong. It doesn't always have to be pretty. It doesn't always need to be aesthetically pleasing. I'm still not a big fan of the Brennan Armstrong experience, I'll tell you that.
Sure.
But a win's a win's a win. And all alone in third place in the ACC is not the worst season in the world. Actually, it's quite good. So good on them. And also, if we're talking about teams with Virginia connective tissue, NC State beat Virginia Tech. Virginia, I mentioned it in our rundown at the top that Tony Elliott got his first home ACC win. Anthony Calandria, man. You want to talk about Dolly Parton being like super likable?
Sure.
Anthony Calandria is the Virginia Dolly Parton.
Here's where you connect bombs,
Is that what
Ty.
I'm saying?
Here's where you connect impressive bombs from Anthony Calandria, because you're a pro at this job.
That's right. Anthony Calandria's final 2 touchdown passes were dimes.
Okay.
They were absolute dimes in this win. And I just keep finding it harder and harder to not like this team. They play tough. They play gritty football. Malik Washington set records in both receptions and yards today. This is a team that is playing hard. The wins aren't there yet. But the fact that they are as gritty as they are, as pesky as they are, usually portends better things to come, perhaps in 2024 and beyond. So good on them.
I agree. Do you know what is one of the great things in sports, Ty? Do I have the floor? Do I have a warm fuzzy, or do you have more?
Go ahead. I need to warm up the pipes here. Go ahead.
Okay. One of the great things in sports is a team going into a hostile environment and having a crowd of crazy, happy, enthusiastic, warm and fuzzy fans feeling great. What could go wrong? And then the Appalachian State Mountaineers come to town after 26,000 James Madison fans surround the ESPN College Game Day set. And App State says, shh. App State's applying for postseason. JMU applying for postseason berth. Great. I fully agree with everything. Totally bummed that the rules dictate that they can't play in the postseason. And App State in overtime says, what a win for the Mountaineers. What a win for the ears. It wasn't pretty. They jump out to a lead. They hold on. They win in overtime. That's a great thing in sports, Ty. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to go on the road. Just like TVD, just to loop it back to Miami. Remember the quote he had, I think, last year that he loved going on the road because he likes playing in a big, loud college environment, and Miami doesn't really have one?
I'll get there. I have that on my list.
Winning at JMU, crazy impressive.
I got
App
two
State.
more warm fuzzies.
Please.
Throw them out to the great state of Oklahoma. We had 2 stories there that got me going. The Jackson Arnold thing. So I don't know if people saw, but Dylan Gabriel went down with a concussion. Jackson Arnold, the so-called quarterback of the future for Brent Venables in Oklahoma, burned his red shirt to come in. This is a close game on the road at BYU.
Yeah.
His numbers were not sparkling by any stretch. But one of the things that, if you read the post game, if you watch the game, one of the things that you will notice is it seems like he just gets it. He gets the offense. There was a big moment, a 3rd and long in this game where he went to the line. Jeff Lebby gave him the play call. He checked it down from a play that was supposed to be more down the field to a slant through a perfect throw, I believe, to Jaleel Farouk. And it was a successful play. It was moments like that that don't necessarily show up in the stat sheet. But for anybody who watches the game and is looking forward to what Jackson Arnold might bring to the equation moving forward for Oklahoma, that was a positive sign. He's a freshman. That he was able to make that move in a big game on the road in a key spot, deliver the pass on time accurately, and help his team win the game. They won 31-24. They were a huge favorite in this game. And before Dylan Gabriel went down, he was basically just lighting up BYU. So the fact that he went down, that Arnold came in, and he was able to be successful and confident and grow into the game, I thought was a big deal. So kudos to him and kudos to Oklahoma for having the wherewithal to put him in. And speaking of Oklahoma,
what was the score though when Dylan Gabriel went down? He was playing well, but Oklahoma wasn't separating itself.
They
from
were not
BYU.
separating themselves. No. I think if he had played the full game, it would have been a much, much different story because they were not stopping him.
No.
But the fact that, you lose him, you lose a guy who's got the hot hand, and you turn it over to a freshman, and Jackson Arnold delivered in the way that he did, made big plays when he had to. That's really, really encouraging.
Yeah.
So I was excited about that. And, just to close the loop on Oklahoma, man, my pokes could go 9-3. If they beat BYU next week, they go 9-3. And since the bye week, I want to say, I looked at it earlier, 6-1. Since the bye week, they've completely reconstructed their season almost entirely on the fly. So good on them. That's a warm fuzzy.
I agree.
I
want
have
me to go
one
next?
more. I have one more.
No, please go.
My final one is just the Clemson North Carolina game was fun. It was fun. It was fun on the ground.
Will Shipley came alive.
Will Shipley came alive. Omarion Hampton came alive. Phil Maffa came alive. I said it earlier, but close to like 500 yards rushing in this game. The Clemson defense got 3 turnovers of North Carolina. They held Carolina to 4 of 14 on third downs. They stepped on the gas after going down 7 points in the first quarter. This is a gutty win for Clemson. I don't know what to make of Clemson this year. We obviously shouldn't throw dirt on Clemson and Dabo Swinney. There's still too much talent there. It is not your older brother's Clemson at this point. They've clearly got some things they got to work out in the offseason, but this was a very losable game. And the fact that they won it in the manner that they did, I thought was impressive.
So we joked about this before. What are the odds? What's their record at the moment, Clemson?
4 losses. Yeah, 7-4.
They're 7-4. So they could end the season 9-4 with the bowl win.
No.
And the odds of Dabo after the season saying, you know what? A lot of teams would look at 9 wins and say that's pretty doggone impressive. We hold ourselves to a higher standard here, but that's just some perspective.
It will happen. Yeah, it will
absolutely will happen.
All right. What else do you got?
Warm fuzzy wise?
Yeah.
Honestly, because the SEC didn't play a ton of teams, I think we just have to highlight the fighting Aggies of New Mexico State. I wanted to put this in scary stories, but it's year 1 of Auburn. Auburn should beat New Mexico State. But I think the story really is Jerry Kittle's a really good college football coach.
Yeah, man.
Jerry Kittle's just a really good college football coach. It was on the ground. It was stuffing Auburn almost from the jump. And it's not like New Mexico State is trouncing the teams that they're playing otherwise. Auburn didn't come close to some of the other opponents of the Aggies. So just shout out Las Cruces. That's a warm and fuzzy to do that to Auburn. Jerry Kittle just wins football games.
Is Diego Pavia one of our dudes?
Yes, he absolutely is.
He has to be in that discussion. We'll get to dudes
he's
here.
on the list.
We'll get to. Should we do dudes now? Should we do that now?
You want to do dudes now? Let's do that. Let's do dudes.
Some players are good. Some are great. And some are just dudes. Welcome to Dude Alert, presented by Pristine Auction.
Yeah, let's do the dude thing now. So last week you gave out a gold goblet. We decided we're going to give out a gold, a silver, and a bronze goblet. Who gets the bronze dude goblet this week?
I'm going to give that to TJ Harden, who was so good for UCLA that maybe he saved Chip Kelly's job. That's a pretty impressive thing. He gets a goblet. How about that?
Bronze goblet? Okay.
TJ Harden, UCLA. I'll do honorable mention goblets after. My silver goblet, I'm going to say George Halani. How about that? Boise State. I haven't even mentioned Boise State yet, but he ran really, really well for the Broncos. No Andy Avalos. Big win over Utah State. I like highlighting different parts of the sport. Can I give a gold goblet, Ty?
I'd love you to, yeah.
Frank Harris.
Oh, big
all
Frank.
Over the field. UTSA absolutely destroying USF, setting up a huge matchup next week against Tulane. UTSA in their first season, they start the season off quite slowly and are just on a roll. Frank Harris, and I'm going to have them split the goblet. They can both drink, High C, Sprite, whatever they want out of the golden goblet. Frank Harris to Joshua Cephas. Josh Cephas, just an unbelievable connection. So shout out to the Roadrunners. Shout out to Jeff Traylor. Shout out to another impressive performance and a great year in the American for UTSA.
So you didn't say Diego Pavia.
No, he's on my honorable mentions.
All right, so he gets the honorable mention goblet. Diego Pavia for me, I thought for sure is top 3. But clearly on this list, Diego Pavia, quarterback, New Mexico State. He was the guy, I mean, I saw people tweeting this out earlier today.
Yeah.
Had that play back in week 1 or week 2 where his helmet got twisted around. It was backwards on his head, and he threw a pass anyway just to get rid of the ball. Had the wherewithal to throw it out of bounds. So it's been a bit of a year for him. Obviously, going on the road to Auburn and knocking off the Tigers is a pretty big one.
Huge.
A pretty big one for New Mexico State.
I also have T-Mac, who continues to be incredible. Tora McMillan, I should pronounce his name correctly. Tatiro, yeah. Troy Franklin for Oregon. Mike Sanders still with his picks. Brendan Presley on your Oklahoma State Cowboys. Jaheim White, West Virginia, all over the place. Taj Brooks, a really nice day for running backs in the Big 12. How about Jabbar Muhammad for Washington, smothering Oregon State through the air? And that's my list of dudes.
I've also got Sam Hartman, Dan.
What did he do?
Sam Hartman beat his old team.
Okay.
It may not have been the most impressive win. It was over Wake Forest. Wake Forest has had a bit of a rough season, in case you haven't been paying attention. But Sam Hartman, 4 touchdowns, a clean game otherwise. They won going away, but sort of an emotional thing for him. The hair was looking magnificent. He looks like Mufasa with that hair. It's incredible.
Okay.
He gets my due.
What bowl game is Notre Dame going to play in?
I don't know. I'm sure you're going to buy me the T-shirt for it, though.
Of course I will. Come on. If you're not going to support Notre Dame, I'm going to help you.
Dan, Pristine Auction. Again, your ultimate destination for signed sports memorabilia. We love Pristine Auction.
Yeah.
You can get signed gear from dudes that played for your favorite team. I looked it up earlier. You can get Justin Herbert gear. Ooh. You can get Bryce Young gear.
Come in.
Bids start at $1. $1. Head on out to pristineauction.com. Use the code SOLID. You will get $10 off your very first win. Again, pristineauction.com, the sponsors of our Dude Alert segment.
Love it. Where are we going next? Scaries?
Give me the scaries. You got the sound?
Of course I do.
Dan, Hard Rock Stadium has a capacity of about 65,000. The official attendance listed for today's Louisville-Miami game was announced at about 45,000, 44,996 to be exact.
Okay.
I saw some folks who were there. They were tweeting that it maybe got to 30. The buy one, get 2 free promotion did not work all that well, and obviously Miami lost. There were large swaths of the stadium that were completely bare. And man, that sucks. This is a big, I don't know if it was just a Miami thing. I don't know if it was a Miami thing with everyone going home early for Thanksgiving thing. Whatever it was, it sucked. It sucked. So maybe moving a stadium closer to campus can help fix that. I don't know, but that was a big time freaking bummer to look and see that in the upper deck. Just nobody there.
Yeah, I'm not going to pile on. You know, there are the issues that Miami has in filling that stadium. It's not a huge stadium, as you mentioned. It's not like they're struggling to like fill the Big House or something like that they went over the top when built like a 104,000 seater. And so, you know, there are its own issues. There's a lot to do in Miami, and it's unfortunate. I think the MLS stadium is even farther away. I think it's in Fort Lauderdale. So that's not really an option either. It makes for such a bad viewing experience.
I know.
To make it look like a Marlins game when they're terrible and there's 844 people watching a slow dribbling ground ball to second base. So, no, it is scary, and it sucks for the players. And you know what? As much as I like to give Mario Cristobal a hard time for leaving Oregon and having this situation at Miami, like, it makes all of their jobs more difficult.
It does.
Because how are you supposed to sell, like, the ACC struggles at the top this year. All due respect to Louisville, all due respect to Florida State, but like any conference is much healthier with 4 or 5 very strong teams, and Miami not being able to get it together certainly has. It doesn't help when Hard Rock Stadium looks like that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing for me, if I'm doing more fuzzy, scary stories, it's late. Maryland. Dude, Maryland. It is a death, taxes, and Maryland finding ways to lose kind of thing.
Yeah. No, at this point, we could probably pitch and get a series on Netflix about the terrible losses that Maryland has been able to manufacture out of thin air in big winnable moments against good teams.
And I like Mike Locksley. I like Mike Locksley.
Do ya?
I do. No, I do.
Yeah.
And they are better since he got there.
Sure.
I like Mike Locksley a lot. I know he loves Maryland. I know he cares about the area. It was one of the jokes that we made like 5 years ago whenever he took that job.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating. Talia is frustrating. He is frustrating. He
Yeah.
always makes the big mistake. He always does. And they're always 5-0 in September, and now they're 1-5 since. It's just really, really frustrating because it's harder being in the Big Ten East. Maybe things change a little bit next year when they go divisionless. I don't know. I don't think it gets easier to be in the Big Ten.
But they're a beneficiary of a more
Big
varied
time.
schedule. Yeah.
Big time. So maybe that takes some of the pressure off. I don't know, but it's frustrating to watch it. Now, as a Penn State alum, what they've done to Maryland the last couple of years has been satisfying just on the Penn
Sure.
State fan level, okay? But nonetheless, to be a Maryland fan, I got to believe is very, very frustrating to see
they
this
come
happen
close.
time and again.
They are. Look, you can fill the in memoriam segment of the Oscars with all of their
Brutal.
losses. Yeah.
And the last thing for me on the scary story side is the coaching situations at Baylor, at Houston, and at Indiana. I think we're fast approaching a world in which one or all of those are open because Baylor got annihilated by TCU. And this was a game for a half. The offense did its part. They kept pace for a while. But second half, man, the defense bottomed out. I talked to Peter Pope, our authority on all things Baylor.
Our chief sadness officer.
Archie, and he was like, Baylor is pack it up, pack it in, man.
Yeah.
The Dave Aranda era is not going over well with the fan base at this point.
We have to do better.
Yeah, I mean, use the Batman voice until you're blue in the face, but that is not a great situation. There's also, I think, a decision to be made on Dana Holgerson. And
Sure.
we like him, right? He's fun. He's got the hair. He's got the offense. Usually he's got the offense, but Houston now is in line for its third losing season in the last 5 years. And if you look around the sport, the landscape in Texas is not getting any easier to be a good college football team, right? You've got Texas going into the SEC. You've got SMU going into the ACC. The SEC moving a little bit more into your recruiting territory. It is not going to be easier to be a program.
And your
in
conference
Texas.
adding, right? Arizona schools, Utah, Colorado. Yeah.
It is not going to be easier in the Big 12 next season. I mean, just because Texas and Oklahoma are leaving does not make it easier. I think it's going to be, if anything, it's going to be kind of crazy.
Sure.
So if you're Houston, do you make the move now? It feels like we're coming to that point. I also mentioned Indiana. Indiana lost to Michigan State. It's a bad deal to lose to Michigan State in Week 12. Where Michigan State is at, it's a bad deal. I mean, Indiana's been competitive back half of the schedule, but losing to Michigan State in the manner that they did is very disconcerting. It feels like it's time to move on from Tom Allen.
By the way, one of my brothers is in town, and I was mentioning the Iowa, just on the topic of Indiana, mentioning the Iowa craziness that they don't need to score that many points to win games, and it's a particularly good year in the Big Ten to be that kind of team. And I started listing all of the teams that either sometimes or generally have trash offenses, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned Indiana 3 times on that list. I was like, yeah, you got Minnesota, you got Wisconsin, you've got Illinois, you've got Purdue, you've got Indiana, you've got Michigan State, you've got Indiana. Penn State looks like garbage half the time. You've got Indiana. And so that's not a great sign that I just kept being reminded of the Hoosiers.
What do you got?
Okay, scaries for me as I bring my list up once again. Utah against Arizona.
Oh, man.
The entire team is hurt. They're all hurt. Everybody. Every last one of them is injured, the Utes. And that's scary, and it sucks if you're a Utah fan because it's just not fun. It's just not fun to watch that team try with a bunch of third-stringers out there. USC sputtering out of control. I tweeted this out that it's just not going to work for Lincoln Riley and USC.
You're ready to cut bait right now.
Not a take. This is not a take. What single reason would you have for saying No. USC is going to improve as soon as they lose their most transformational quarterback athletically of all time. They're going to get better and figure it out. They're going to get better as they don't recruit well, as their schedule becomes more and more difficult in the Big Ten when they play not only Oregon and Washington, but Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State's defense and Iowa's defense and what Wisconsin's defense will morph into. Like, it's going to get better. And then they're not going to play defense and get run through by all of these average offenses every week. Things are going to get better with them not recruiting and not building up talent and depth on this roster. I don't know. You either have to recruit to make me think that something could be turning a corner, or you got to win winnable games.
What if they hire a guy like a Jim Leonard to run the defense? What if the defense suddenly gets better?
You need players. Jim Leonard can only do so much with this. Have you seen what the USC defense look like? If USC were located in the Midwest and Jim Leonard had a crew of assistant coaches that were scouting the area for underrated 3-star linebackers, okay. USC doesn't have a recruiting machine. USC's defensive staff, what faith do you have that Lincoln Riley will build a defensive staff around Jeff Collins or Jim Leonard or any of the names being bandied about for this job? We know how this is going to end. That was my point. It's not going to end well.
It is crazy to me that, and you know this, I mean, there's been rumors out there about Lincoln maybe wanting to go to the NFL.
Why would an NFL team want Lincoln Riley?
I don't know why an NFL team would want Lincoln Riley at this point. Okay, that's a separate conversation, but it is interesting on some level that going into this new conference, this transformational conference realignment move of two teams from California joining a conference based in Chicago, that both of them could be looking for coaches.
I don't think they're going to fire him this year.
I don't think they're going to fire him, but I think there's a chance.
But we know how this story ends.
We know how the story ends. I think there's a chance he could at least look in the NFL. I don't know why they'd want him, but I think the option's out there.
You see Dan Mullen standing up for his dude, Chip Kelly, New Hampshire Mafia, that wrong LA coach is on the hot seat.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. Dan Mullen.
What else?
Pretty good. Saturday scaries. I have Auburn losing to New Mexico State. How about Kentucky sputtering? Your beautiful, precious Kentucky Wildcats, who I had to yell at you on the preview show. Like, why are they favored, Ty? And you're like, well, South Carolina's been... No. They're on the road. Why is Kentucky favored? What have they done? So they start 5-0, and they're currently 1-5 since? Is that what the situation is with Kentucky?
Just a brutal game.
They don't have an offense.
To score 14 points? Is that what it was against
17-14, South Carolina. All due respect to South Carolina.
South Carolina doesn't play defense.
And guess what? What was the solution for a team that can't play defense?
Play Kentucky.
Big Blue Nation coming into town. Shout out South Carolina. Once again, what did I tell you? Shane Beamer, as soon as you've completely let me down, you go and completely redeem yourself.
Home rattler.
Colorado. The Colorado Fighting Buffaloes.
Man.
Start out the season 3-0. Oh, man. FanDuel's got their championship odds. What would the line be set at against the 2019 LSU Tigers?
You saw that tweet, too.
LSU minus 344 points. It's going to be like the 1919 Georgia Tech game that they won 222-3 or whatever. Shedeur Sanders got hurt, hand injury. Hope he's okay. Colorado is a very bad team. They are who we thought they were going to be. They should have an even worse record. They should have lost Colorado State. So they got completely drilled by Wazoo. 56-14 Friday night.
Yeah, man.
They're not recruiting. And I'm going to echo myself one more time. It'd be cool if it worked out. Deion Sanders is super entertaining. It'd be a great story for the Big 12, adding all these teams. Big name in Deion Sanders, recruiting Texas, all that stuff. We know how this is going to end. We know how this is going to end. He's going to keep coaching. They put him in a commercial. They put Deion Sanders, who's going to go likely 4-8, as like the centerpiece of the university's commercial. We know how it's going to end. And it's not going to end well. That's all. Colorado. Tough back half.
If you are listening, send us an email, solidverbal@gmail.com. You can also, of course, reach out on social media. Let us know what your scary stories are for week 12 for college football as a whole. We've got one big week, rivalry week left yet. And then, of course, we get the conference championships and bowls and playoffs and things of that ilk. So a lot more scary stories to come, Dan.
Yeah.
I've got a roast. I don't know about you.
I think I just got all my roasting out of the way.
You did? You got it out of the way?
Yeah.
All right, let's play.
We used to roast Stay Puft Marshmallows by the fire at Camp Wakanda.
I want to start with our reverbs. We got a lot of great reverbs again. Kudos
of course.
to Shay, our reverb engineer, for
We
cutting
love
these
Shay.
together. I need to compose my voice a little bit here before I do my roast. So let's play your calls at 855-VERBAL-3 this year, college football week 12.
I was listening to your preview show earlier in the week, and you guys cracked a couple jokes about the difficulty of the games that the SEC had scheduled for itself this week. So I was just calling to make sure that you guys were planning on issuing a formal apology to the fine folks in the athletic department down at Auburn University.
Hey guys, this is Will in Maine.
Jimmy from Ann Arbor.
Hey, Dan and Ty, it's Patrick from Tybee Island. You know what? I'm a Georgia fan, and I don't think Kirby Smart has a soul, and I'm okay with that. Go Dogs.
Tennessee. Dolly Parton deserved better.
Big shout out to Michigan for answering the question on everybody's mind. Can Michigan win a clunker? Go Blue, 1,000 wins. See you next week.
The undefeated Ohio State Buckeyes coming to Ann Arbor to take on the undefeated Michigan Wolverines. Let me just tell you right now, Buckeyes, we got your sign. Go Blue, baby.
Hey, Ty, Dan, this is Tom Herman. I just wanted to say, hey, man, I tried to tell Michigan. Maryland is no joke. Go FAU.
If Notre Dame still had real grass, Michael Cronin's jersey would be as green as a leprechaun.
I think Dabo wanted to remind North Carolina that he's Clemson and he's still got it.
I'm not sure how I'm going to get used to Arizona having a good football team, especially one that's physical enough to push other teams around. Also, I'd like to say that, hey, Kyle Whittingham, if you're going to be calling timeouts, going for two, and kicking onside when you're down 4 scores, you deserve that late touchdown bomb.
Iowa winning the Big Ten West is like the winner of the Daytona 500 only having to drive 25 miles an hour to win the race.
Evanston used to ban bowling, but not in 2023. Congrats to David Braun. Go Cats.
In the biggest games, on the biggest stages, at the end of games, Penix gets the ball to Odunze. Odunze's the best receiver. Penix is the best quarterback. Go Dogs.
Nebraska loses in overtime against Wisconsin. 1 score again. I'm not sure what dark eldritch gods of the corn Nebraska has upset, but I'm about ready to begin human sacrifice to make it right. Go Big Red.
Hey, Mountain West. Smells like in here. Boise, go fire another coach. Wyoming, soft. Air Force, soft. San Jose State next week. I hope you're bringing it because these Rebels are rolling.
I think the Oakland Athletics really need to reconsider their move to Las Vegas. There's just too many competing entertainment options now. You've got, obviously, the Raiders, but also the Golden Knights, the Crazy Spear concert venue thing, and now the UNLV Running Rebels! Go Rebs!
Yeah, I'm going to need you to give all of the s'mores to the thicker kicker. All of them.
Auburn is built for the Birmingham Bowl. Clown Eagle.
There we go. Yeah,
Love
we didn't even mention UNLV, man. 31-27. Big win over Air Force this week.
That's true. Jade Mayava. Yeah.
Big
Ridiculous.
Win. My roast this week goes out to the elite Michigan men and women.
Oh, God. Here we go. I love this.
That hatched the idea that the Wolverines should punch back against the Big Ten by leaving the conference.
Great.
Surely, Dan, an upstanding brand like Michigan, the Wolverines, could find a place where they're truly appreciated, like, say, maybe the SEC. I don't know. Many of those same folks also thought they were on the legal team, if you've been checking Twitter.
Yeah.
They had you believe that this week was going to be some high-stakes courtroom drama, some battle for the fight, the soul of college football. And despite their advice, the actual lawyers did exactly what Michigan's been doing all along. They got to look at what plays were coming next, and then they punted. So forgive me, because on Friday I laughed out loud, because after all the bravado, the company line suddenly shifted to, quote, putting the focus back on the student athletes. Did you notice that?
Have to, of course.
It was all fun and games until a coach got caught destroying computer evidence.
Wow.
Or the internet started looking for some guy named Uncle T.
Sure.
Then it was hilarious. It was hilarious. This story gets more ridiculous every time Dan Wetzel blinks.
Mm-hmm.
It is truly the most ridiculous thing we have ever covered. Here is the reality. The reality is this. Michigan made a good deal this week. They made a good deal. Jim Harbaugh gets 2 Saturdays off. The Big Ten's going to shut up about all this for a while. Sometimes it's the right move to just play the field position game, even if it's not the most satisfying thing.
Yeah.
The bigger picture, though, is that it's time, I think, for the highbrow Michigan crowd to start accepting the obvious. And that is that not all Michigan men do things the right way.
Oh.
Some of them clearly didn't here. Otherwise, the lawyers would have gone for Tony Petiti's throat. Unfortunately, no. These guys were caught because they were careless. The program's going to be rewarded with the wrong kind of vacation. And to be honest, I'm not all that offended by it. I'm kind of impressed. Because for a generation, Michigan's been on this journey to recapture the legend, to get back to their former self. And I mean it sincerely when I say this. All of this to me means that they're finally back. They made it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the game's changed a lot since the last time they were on top of the mountain. In 2023, in college football, it's as much about the on-field stuff as it is the dark alleys and the manila envelopes and all the stuff that gets clicks online. The irony for me is that all this, despite all this, Michigan still might have the best team. They weren't impressive today, but they still might have the best team when push comes to shove if they make it into that playoff. So my advice, if anybody cares, to the holier-than-thou Michigan crowd that I have read so vociferously online, is just come to grips with reality, man. Come to grips with reality. This season, over the next 5 games or so, if it lasts that long for Michigan, could still be fun as hell. That's when it gets truly dark, but it could be fun as hell before then. So if this is your only shot at winning a title before the NCAA comes in and sets the whole thing on fire and Jim Harbaugh goes pro and the team transfers out, enjoy it while you can. And on that final note of joining the SEC, you don't have what it takes to be in the SEC. You don't. You know why?
Why is that?
Because you fired Connor Stallions.
That's true.
If you were Auburn, you'd give him a wig and 2 tickets to watch Bama play. That's what I have to say about that.
That was great. I was hoping you were going to punctuate it with like dropping the Eve 6, here's to the night, right? Everything is pointing to this last few weeks of Jim Harbaugh before the NCAA hammer.
We don't got the rights to Eve 6, man.
Here's to the night.
Maybe we could find the 8-bit version of that.
Alive. Yeah, that would have been great, Ty. That would have been the mic drop.
A little more Andy Rooney than usual, but
that's great, Ty.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
Are you Uncle T? Be honest. This would be a great smoke screen because your name does start with that magic letter.
Man, I ain't paying for all that travel.
I know. Ty has so many golf things he'd rather spend money on.
I'd much rather spend it on a golf round than paying for some guy to go to watch a Purdue game, especially after Purdue blew up my bet.
And you do love a good vacuum, and you're not getting that being involved in this operation.
No, not a good one anyway. All right. Look, fun episode here this evening, week 12, officially in the books. Couple games going on here as we speak. San Jose State beating San Diego State. We will, I think, go into a little bit more detail. Frankly, there were a lot of games that we didn't get to cover to the extent that I would have liked, just because we're trying to go through this as quickly as we can. So we'll do that on the next episode that we put out on Tuesday for the general public, a little bit earlier for people who are out there on Patreon at verballers.com. If you made it this far, make sure you hit subscribe or follow on the podcast. Make sure you download and listen and tell your friends and send us ratings and reviews because all that stuff helps. We are gearing up for the end of the season. We are gearing up for bowl season. We've got a lot yet to come that we're very, very excited about. So if nothing more, go check out our website, solidverbal.com, and learn more about us. If you're new here If not, we appreciate you stopping on by and, of course, supporting what we do.
Ty, here's to the nights we felt alive. Here's to the tears you knew you'd cry. Here's to goodbye. Tomorrow is going to come too soon. That's it. That's all
You
I
did
have.
the actual thing. That was the actual lyric.
Those are the actual lyrics.
Wow.
At the end of the song, end of the episode, end of
I didn't
probably
think
the
you were
Jim
that
Harbaugh.
deep.
Come on, Ty, I got your back.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks again for downloading, for listening, for supporting what we do. Talk to y'all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.